I didn't know a room could change temperature that fast until my girlfriend stepped out and left me alone with her sister. The words from the title didn't come right away. They landed later. But the feeling, the shift, happened instantly, like someone had turned down the noise in the world and left only the hum of something unfinished. We were at the repair shop on 9th and Mason, the kind that smells like oil and burnt coffee. My girlfriend had insisted we bring her car here because Mark won't rip you off, which meant Mark definitely ripped people off, just not her. The waiting area had 3 plastic chairs, a faded poster of a smiling tire, and a radio that kept cutting out. It was late afternoon, that tired hour where everything feels slightly delayed. Her sister sat across from me, legs crossed, coat still on even though the place was warm. I'd met her twice before, always brief, always with other people around. She had that calm confidence that doesn't announce itself. No loud gestures, no reaching for attention. She just occupied space like she was allowed to be there. My girlfriend stood up suddenly. "I'm gonna ask how long this is gonna take," she said, already halfway toward the counter. She didn't look back. And then it was just us. Silence stretched. Not awkward exactly. More like deliberate. I checked my phone even though there was nothing new. When I looked up, her sister was watching me. Not staring, not smiling. Just observing, like she was reading something and hadn't reached the end of the sentence yet. "You don't like places like this?" she said. It wasn't a question. I shrugged. "I don't think anyone does." She tilted her head slightly, considering that. "Some people do," she said. "They like waiting. Gives them an excuse not to rush." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. She noticed. Her mouth curved, just barely, like she'd expected my silence and approved of it. The radio crackled again. A mechanic laughed too loudly somewhere behind the wall. I became very aware of my hands, resting uselessly on my knees. She reached into her bag and pulled out a bottle of water, then paused. "You want this?" she asked, holding it out. "Yeah, thanks." Our fingers brushed when I took it. Nothing dramatic. No spark you could measure. But my hand lingered longer than necessary, and she didn't pull away right away either. When she finally did, she adjusted her sleeve like she needed something to do with her hands. "You're quieter than I thought you'd be," she said. "Is that bad?" "No," she replied. "It's rare." Another pause. Not empty. Loaded. She leaned back in her chair, eyes drifting to the window. "You're good to her," she added, softly. "I try to be. I know." She looked back at me then, really looked. There was something steady in her gaze. Something that made me feel like I'd been standing in a doorway without realizing it. From the corner of my eye, I saw my girlfriend still talking to Mark, laughing now. Time stretched thin between us, fragile. That's when her sister leaned forward, just enough to close the distance, and said quietly, "Don't waste this moment." Before I could ask what she meant, my girlfriend turned around and waved, and the world snapped back into place. I saw her again a week later, and it felt less like coincidence and more like a test I hadn't studied for. My girlfriend had asked me to drop off a folder at her sister's office. "She's drowning in paperwork," she'd said, rolling her eyes. The building was older, downtown, all narrow hallways and dim lights that buzzed if you listened too closely. I hesitated outside the door longer than I should have, adjusting the folder in my hands like it mattered. When I knocked, her voice came through first. "Yeah." She looked up from her desk when I stepped in, surprise flickering across her face before she smoothed it away. Same calm, same composed presence. But there were new details I hadn't noticed before. A faint crease between her brows. Her hair pulled back instead of loose. Sleeves rolled up, exposing wrists marked with the faint red lines of a long day. "Hey," I said, suddenly unsure how loud my voice was supposed to be. "You're early," she replied, glancing at the clock. She said tomorrow. I know. I was already nearby. That wasn't entirely true, but she didn't call me out on it. She stood and took the folder from me, fingers brushing mine again, brief, polite, intentional in its restraint. "Thanks for bringing this," she said. "You didn't have to." I didn't mind. She gave a small nod and returned to her desk, motioning for me to sit. I stayed standing. I wasn't sure I trusted myself not to lean too close if I sat. She worked quietly while I watched the room absorb her, How she read through documents like she'd learned long ago not to rush. How she sighed without realizing it. Just a shallow release of air like she'd been holding something in all day. "You don't have to wait," she said, not looking up. "I know." That made her pause. She looked at me then, really looked, and something flickered. Hesitation, maybe. Or fatigue. She rubbed at her temple with 2 fingers, the gesture so small it felt private. "Some days," she said slowly, "it's hard to remember what's yours and what you've taken on for other people." I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure if she wanted one. Her laugh came unexpectedly, quiet, almost embarrassed. "Sorry, that was a lot." "It's okay," I said. "You sound tired." She exhaled through her nose, like I'd named something she hadn't wanted acknowledged. "I am." The words sat between us. Honest. Undressed. She gathered her things, slipping her bag over her shoulder. When she walked past me toward the door, she stopped. Too close again. Close enough that I noticed the faint scent of soap, the way her hands trembled just slightly as she adjusted her grip on the strap. "Your girlfriend," she said, carefully. "She really cares about you." "I know." She nodded once, like she was bracing herself against something invisible. Then she reached out, not to touch me, but to straighten the collar of my jacket, fingers hovering before they landed. "Drive safe," she murmured. She stepped away before I could respond, but I stood there long after she left, still feeling the ghost of her hand, wondering why something that small felt like a line I'd already crossed. It happened late, after hours, when the building felt like it had given up pretending anyone was still working. A storm had rolled in without warning. Not dramatic, just steady rain tapping against the windows, the kind that makes time feel slower. The power had flickered earlier, enough to reset the clocks, enough to send half the floor home. She'd stayed. I had too, because I was already there, helping her move boxes from a storage room she wasn't technically supposed to be in after 6. We worked without music, just the sound of cardboard scraping concrete, the rain, our breathing. Close quarters forced us into careful movements, turning sideways, pausing to let the other pass. Every time she brushed by, she muttered a soft sorry, even when it was clearly my fault. At one point, she laughed under her breath. "This is ridiculous," she said, setting a box down. "I should have done this earlier." "You didn't know it'd rain," I said. "That's not what I meant." She leaned against the wall, arms folded, eyes closed for a second. When she opened them, she didn't look at me right away. She stared at the floor, like she was choosing where to step next. "You ever feel like you're constantly editing yourself?" she asked. "Like there's a version of you that never makes it past the first draft?" I swallowed. "Yeah." She nodded, slow. "Good. Then I don't sound crazy." We stood there longer than necessary. The space between us felt charged, not electric, more like pressure building quietly. I noticed the way her shoulders finally dropped, the way her jaw unclenched when she exhaled. I noticed how close her hand was to mine on the box between us, close enough that our knuckles almost touched. Her phone buzzed. She froze, looked at the screen. I didn't see the name, but I saw the shift, the wall going up. She stepped away, turning her body slightly from me as she answered. "Yeah," she said. "No, I'm still at the office." A pause. Her free hand tightened around the phone. "I told you this isn't the time." I looked away, suddenly very interested in the rain streaking down the window. I shouldn't have been listening. I couldn't help it. When she hung up, the room felt smaller. "Sorry," she said. "That was someone I should have stopped answering a long time ago." "You don't have to explain." "I know." She hesitated. "But I want to." That landed harder than it should have. She took a step toward me, then stopped. Her fingers lifted, like she might touch my arm, then dropped back to her side. Her voice was quieter when she spoke again. "You're very patient," she said. "That can be dangerous." "For who?" I asked. She met my eyes then, held them. The rain hit harder against the glass. "For everyone," she said. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't look this time. I moved closer without deciding to. Just one step. Enough that I could feel the warmth of her, the hesitation in her breathing. My hand lifted, aimless, instinctive, hovering near her wrist. She didn't move away, and for half a second, I thought she might close the distance herself. Instead, the hallway lights clicked back on. Too bright, too sudden. Voices echoed somewhere down the hall. She stepped back immediately. I let my hand fall. But even as we pretended nothing almost happened, I knew. Whatever line we'd been circling, we were standing right on it now. The silence didn't come all at once. It crept in after that night and stayed. Days passed without anything technically changing. We still texted when necessary, still existed in the same orbit. But every message felt measured now, edited down to safety. When we finally ended up in the same room again, it wasn't by accident. She'd asked me to meet her at a small cafe near her office, neutral ground, she'd said. It was nearly empty. Late afternoon again. The barista wiped the same counter over and over like he was waiting for us to leave. A half-drunk coffee sat between us, already cold. She didn't look at me at first. She watched the steam fade. "This can't keep feeling like this," she said. "Not we. This." I waited. My hands were folded too tightly on my lap. "I've been trying to name it," she continued, "to make it something manageable. But every time I think I've got it figured out, it slips." I nodded once. It felt safer than speaking. She finally looked up. Her eyes searched my face, not for reassurance, clarity, permission maybe. "I don't want to pretend you're just background noise anymore," she said. "And I don't want to lie to myself about why that scares me." The cafe was too quiet. Even the hum of the refrigerator felt loud. "I keep asking myself what I'm doing," she went on. "Why I notice when you're tired. Why I care when you go quiet. That's not." She stopped, shook her head. "That's not how this is supposed to work." I opened my mouth, then closed it. Everything I could say felt like it would tip us too far in one direction. She leaned back, eyes drifting to the window. "You're not confused," she said softly. "You're just careful." That stung because it was true. "I don't know what you want me to do," I said finally. She smiled at that, not happy. "Tired. Neither do I." Another long pause. She traced the rim of her cup with her finger, round and round, like if she stopped it might break something. "I've spent most of my life being responsible," she said. "Doing the right thing. Even when it cost me things I didn't realize I'd miss until much later." Her voice wavered just slightly. She didn't hide it. "I don't trust myself with this," she added. "With me?" I asked. She met my eyes again, held them longer than before. "With how easy it is to forget everything else when I'm around you." The words landed between us, heavy and unguarded. She didn't reach for me, didn't soften it, just let it exist. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said. "And I don't want to wake up one day realizing I was a coward." I swallowed. "So what do we do?" She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding that breath since the storm. "We stop pretending this is nothing," she said. "Even if that means we don't know what it is yet." She stood then, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Before she left, she paused, hand on the back of the chair. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I think about you when I shouldn't." And then she walked out, leaving me with a cold cup of coffee and the sudden, unbearable weight of being seen. The shift didn't announce itself. It arrived quietly, disguised as something ordinary. She left a voicemail by accident. I didn't know that at first. I just saw her name on my phone late one night, long after I should have been asleep. I answered, heart already moving faster than it had any right to. At first I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard movement. Fabric. A sigh. The kind that slips out when someone thinks they're alone. I almost hung up. Almost. Then she spoke. Not to me. Not to anyone. "I can't keep doing this," she said softly. There was a pause. A longer one. I didn't think it would feel like this again. My chest tightened. I stayed frozen, phone pressed to my ear, listening to something I wasn't sure I was meant to hear. "I know you'd tell me to stop overthinking," she continued. "You always did." Other pause. I heard a faint clink, like a glass set down too hard. "He looks at me like you used to. Like I'm not already halfway gone." Silence. Then, quieter, almost ashamed. "That's what scares me." The call ended. I sat there in the dark, phone still warm in my hand, feeling like I'd just stepped into a room where the air had been sealed for years. She didn't text to explain, didn't call back, and I didn't reach out either. It felt wrong to name something she hadn't chosen to give me. The next time I saw her, days later, it was unplanned. A grocery store near my apartment. She was standing in the aisle with the pasta sauces, staring at the shelf like it had personally disappointed her. She noticed me and stilled. "Oh," she said. "Hey, hey." We stood there, carts between us, strangers pretending we hadn't already cracked something open. She glanced away first. "I didn't mean to call you the other night." "I know," I said. Her jaw tightened. She nodded. "Good." She turned to leave, then stopped. Her hand gripped the cart handle a little too hard. "There was someone," she said suddenly. "A long time ago." I didn't interrupt. "He died," she added. "Not dramatic. Just factual. And I got very good at surviving after that." I felt the words settle into me, rearranging things. "I don't think you're him," she said quickly, like she needed to be clear. "That's not what this is." "I know. But," she continued, voice softer now, "you remind me of who I was before everything became about being careful." She finally looked at me then. Really looked. There was no guarding it this time. "I didn't plan for that," she said. "I don't think anyone ever does," I replied. She let out a small, shaky breath. Her eyes glistened, just barely. She blinked it back. "I'm not asking you for anything," she said. "I just needed you to know." I nodded, throat tight. "I'm glad you told me." We stood there a moment longer, suspended in the hum of the store, the mundane stacked around us. As she turned to walk away, she paused. "Some people come into your life," she said, almost to herself, "and you don't realize what they're undoing until it's already happening." She didn't wait for an answer, but I stayed there long after she left, knowing one thing for certain. Whatever this was, it had already shifted something I wouldn't be able to put back. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic turning point, no moment you could point to and say that's when everything changed. It was more like something finally giving in after holding too much weight for too long. She asked me to come over on a Sunday afternoon. Not late, not secretive, just honest. Her place was quiet in a lived-in way, books stacked unevenly, a throw blanket folded with care but not precision. She moved slower than usual, like she wasn't trying to impress or protect anything anymore. Just exist. We didn't talk at first. She made tea. I watched her hands as she poured the water, noticed the slight tremor she didn't try to hide. When she handed me the mug, our fingers touched and stayed that way for a second too long. Neither of us pulled away. "I've been thinking," she said, sitting across from me. I waited. "I don't want to keep pretending this is accidental," she continued, "or that it'll just go away if I ignore it." I nodded. My chest felt tight, but steady. "Me neither." She exhaled, long and slow, like she'd been holding that breath for weeks. "I don't know where this leads," she said. "And I don't need to." "That's okay," I replied. "I'm not asking for a map." She smiled at that. Small. Real. We sat on the couch, close enough that our knees touched. The TV stayed off. Outside, a car passed, tires hissing on pavement. Ordinary sounds. Life continuing, unconcerned with the fact that something delicate was settling into place. "I need you to know," she said quietly. "This isn't about fixing something in me. I know. And it's not about escaping anything either. I know that too." She turned toward me then, resting her forehead against my shoulder. Just that. No rush. Her weight felt natural there, like it had always known where to land. I lifted my hand without thinking and rested it over hers, thumb brushing once. Absent, instinctive. She didn't flinch. We stayed like that for a long time, breathing in sync without trying. No promises. No fear-filled lists of consequences. Just a shared understanding that whatever this was, it deserved honesty instead of avoidance. "I don't feel scared right now," she murmured. "Me neither." That felt like enough. When I eventually stood to leave, she walked me to the door, hesitated, then leaned in and pressed her forehead lightly to mine. No kiss, no rush. Just closeness. "Stay," she said, not as a request, as a truth. So I did. And in that quiet, unremarkable moment, with nothing dramatic to mark it, everything finally stopped resisting what it had already become. I never expected a few stolen moments to change how I see everything. Not in a grand, cinematic way, but in quiet, almost imperceptible shifts that settle into your bones. Looking back now, months later, It's strange how natural it all feels. She taught me that patience isn't about waiting. It's about noticing, about seeing someone fully and letting the space between you fill with understanding instead of noise. And I think she learned something too, that being careful doesn't mean closing yourself off, and that letting someone in doesn't always have to hurt. We still live our separate lives. Responsibilities, deadlines, ordinary obligations, they haven't disappeared. But those moments of honesty, the silent understandings, the small touches that carried weight far heavier than words, have made everything else lighter. I notice the way she laughs now, the subtle tilt of her head when she's listening, and it feels like a privilege rather than a danger. And she notices me too, not in a possessive way, but in a way that makes the world feel less lonely, less scripted, more real. Love, I've realized, isn't always fireworks. Sometimes it's the quiet recognition that someone sees you, really sees you. And that acknowledgement, small as it may seem, can shift the axis of your life without any dramatic declarations. We didn't need grand gestures. We didn't need confessions shouted over rain or melodramatic midnight confrontations. Just presence, just noticing, just being. It hasn't all been perfect. We still catch ourselves hesitating, still have moments when the weight of reality presses down, and yet there's a softness now, a kind of equilibrium, one that doesn't demand perfection, only honesty. I think the biggest lesson is that love doesn't have to be loud to matter. It can exist in quiet gestures, in lingering glances, in the spaces between conversations where no one says a word, but everything is understood. And once you recognize it, once you allow yourself to be present, it's impossible to ignore. Sometimes I catch myself smiling at a memory, a brush of hands, a shared silence, a gaze that said everything we couldn't. And it surprises me how deeply it lingers, how much it has reshaped the way I see connection, intimacy, and care. We ended up where we were always meant to be, not in some scripted happy ending, but in the subtle, enduring comfort of shared understanding. That's the thing about love, it doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it quietly becomes the ground you stand on. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?